I would like to talk to you about cooperative learning. However, this video is not going to be your typical video about cooperative learning. If you go onto YouTube and search cooperative learning, you're going to find 50 tutorial videos telling you the best way to do 50 different flavors of cooperative learning. Almost all of them will be large group cooperative learning, and that's not what I'm really the best at. In fact, I am absolutely confident that there are teachers listening to this video that are far better at implementing cooperative learning lesson plans. My area of expertise is how not to implement them. If there is an error in how to implement a cooperative learning lesson plan, I think I've made it. In fact, I probably invented a few extra in my learning process along the way. So, the thing to be aware of is just like Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison said, never say I failed 99 times. Say I discovered 99 ways which causes failure. And by the way, he wasn't an English teacher. It's 99 ways which cause failure. But still, that's the idea. In fact, in working on his incandescent light bulb, he did over 10,000 ways. He is famous for saying, I discovered 10,000 ways to not make an incandescent light bulb. And then when he finally discovered the way that worked, he then developed that. So the how not to do something, an experiment that fails, has value because you've now learned what doesn't work. And over my experience, I've learned a lot about what doesn't work. One of the reasons why is that every time I went to a conference, a workshop, even my core education classes, which were back in the late 1980s. So it's been a year or two since I had my core education classes. The people who defined and talked about cooperative learning had in their minds large cooperative learning groups with heavily structured roles within those groups. And they thought basically that's it for cooperative learning. I started as a music teacher. I taught strings. We would have small ensembles. We would have string quartets, string quintets. We would do all sorts of things. I worked in the arts, and then I managed to get tinnitus and loved education, but realized, I just can't teach music forever if my ears are going to keep ringing. As it is, they're not ringing that much worse now than they did 30 years ago, but I didn't know that at the time. So I decided to go back to science. So I'm looking at this, and they take cooperative learning is this with these type of division of labor cards. That is way too narrow of a definition. That is way too narrow. It must be more than that, and it is more than that. Cooperative learning is the instructional use of small groups so that students work together to maximize their own and each other's learning. What I had been doing with string quartets, small ensembles, where we would break up into small ensembles, put them into practice rooms, and go around from practice room to practice room to practice room to see how they're doing, that was cooperative learning. But I didn't know it. I defined cooperative learning too narrowly because the people that had been teaching me had been defining it too narrowly. So first big mistake to do not make. Do not define it too narrowly. Realize you can start with groups of 2. So, number 2, don't try to start big. Because I tried to implement that lesson plan with all of those division of labor cards. I took that worksheet home. I memorized that lesson plan. I did it down to the T, and it fell on its face. Why? Because I tried to start too big, too soon. Now, did I explain to them what their roles were and how we were? Yes, I was sage on the stage explaining to them how to work cooperatively together. Yes, I was using exactly how not to do it. Rather, you practice with dyads or triads. A dyad is a group of 2, a triad is a group of 3. Remember, many lesson plan books are sort of like Chilton's manual rather than a cookbook. If anyone here has ever attempted to repair a car with a Chilton's manual, you'll notice there's a lot of stuff they don't tell you. They just assume that if they give you the proper outline of how these parts fit together, you will know what you're doing. For people like me, no. I love YouTube videos where they show you every little part coming off, and then I try to fix it. They are often a shorthand for those who are already experienced. So it is important not only for the kids to get experience, but for you to get experience. And the kids have probably already at some point in time worked with a classmate. So working in dyads and triads, and then putting in that structure via dyads and triads and working up to the larger groups is important. Because if you do like I did and you tried to start big, it will fall flat on its face. Third thing, don't let them select their own groups. That's a bad idea. They're going to select either their friends or the people that they think will do it really well. Have you ever been in a PE class and you're sitting there as the last person selected? Like yours truly had a lot of experience at that. No, do not let them select their own groups. And they're going to complain. And you can say things to them like, you don't have to like your teammates. You only have to be able to work with them. This is a democracy. You can like who you want, but you should be able to work with everybody, and you must respect them. So you assign the folks to the group. They say, but what, I really don't want to. Okay, more than likely or not, your grades are actually going to go up when you work in groups. Not all of us is as smart together. No one of us, rather, is as smart as all of us together. You are better off working together than working only separately. Now, in all fairness, I am doing this at about midnight in my school office because there is so much working together happening at this school that I basically couldn't get it done before. So there is something to be said for doing one's background work and doing one's homework by oneself and preparing for working together in groups. By the way, the real world is divided up into teams, and we don't always select who those teams are. You might have neighborhoods. Churches are divided into parishes, armies, unions, political parties, families. You can select your friends, but you don't exactly select your families. Work shifts, carpool, sports clubs, fraternal organizations. Gosh, lots of different things operate in teams. It is necessary to learn how to operate in teams. And guess what? You don't get to select all of those teams. Now, you can select some of them, but you did not select the parents that you were born to. Some of you may have had parents who passed away, and then you, as an older child, either were selected when you were adopted or you semi-selected and they selected you back. But most people do not get to select their name. Most people do not get to select their parents. So, pretty much every bit of employment in North America is going to require that you work with a team that isn't necessarily of your choosing. It is important to have those skills. Fourth thing, do not ignore the students as they work. One of the biggest temptations, especially with the limits that we have on the time that we can put into our classes, is the temptation to leave our classes alone and go get something done so that we don't have to do it at home. Go grade papers so you don't have to do it at home. No. Even though they are working independently in groups, you need to filter around the room. You need to offer suggestions and praise to those who are working, encourage those who are not working to participate, check on each group to see how the things are going, and help any groups which may have disagreements or conflicts. You may have to remove students from a group, put a student with another group, or there may be a student that just has to work by his or herself because they refuse to work. And strangely enough, there actually is research. I run across an article that says, should I leave the classroom when the students are working independently in teams? I have a short answer for that. And by the way, the article has the same answer in all fairness. No, don't. Do not leave. Not only should you not leave students unattended, you don't want to just sit and mentally leave or physically leave. Now, I do understand that every once in a while a teacher has to, the call of nature comes and you run down the hallway for 2 minutes and you end up leaving your class unattended for a couple of minutes while you answer the call. That's understandable. But for the most part, you never want to leave classes unattended. Mistake number 5. Do not use group grades, at least at the beginning. Make sure that your parents and administration understand your grading protocol for cooperative products. They need to be aware of how you are grading. And it is important that you grade with a mixture. So, for example, you could use at the beginning 10% is the cooperative nature and 50% is the tests and 20% is the group, and you have group assignments. It's however you do it. But make sure that everyone understands exactly how it's being done. Your students, your parents, and your administration. Understand your grading protocol. It has to be clear and it has to be communicated. And last but not least, successful cooperative learning takes time. Cooperative learning takes more time than the sage on the stage delivery methods. It is not as efficient because they are having to communicate together. It also takes practice. Notice, before we can work in groups with these structured labor roles, you must first learn how to work cooperatively, because many students have not had to do that. Many times in a private school, I've had parents that walk through the school, and what they expect to see is students sitting in desks, in rows, working quietly. Whereas sometimes what they see in the elementary classroom is students up in an art class, wandering around the room, getting supplies, making pictures. The place is messy, they are messy, and they are learning. Not all learning takes place sitting at a desk all day. If I wanted to do that, I would work for a factory. That would drive me nuts. How much more would it drive the kids nuts if they have to sit there all day? For example, with this COVID-19 crisis, it is one of my big concerns. How are we going to do varied learning if we have to sit the kids at their desks and put shields up between them, or go around looking like in suits that look like some bad 1970s sci-fi movie? But those are issues to be discussed at one time. So be aware, give it time, be willing to fail, be willing to have them fall flat on their face, and you fall flat on your face, and eventually you'll learn how to implement this with your kiddos. Thank you.